Wanted to get into my throwback bag a bit today and revisit one of the greatest point guard performances of all time, and that was Kyrie Irving's Game 5 of the 2016 NBA Finals against the Golden State Warriors. So for context, Cleveland came into this particular game trailing 3-1. Individually, Kyrie Irving was okay at this point in the series. Wasn't bad, but wasn't spectacular just yet. He had like one stinker where he had 10 points earlier in the series, and I think a pretty inefficient game one where he shot at around 32% from the floor. But generally, Kyrie Irving was in a decent enough spot as a performer headed into this game. But he knew, as well as Cleveland, that in order for them to set themselves up for this historical comeback, they would need a massive performance from not only LeBron, but Kyrie Irving, and Kyrie and LeBron were both able to deliver at an extremely high level in this game to try to swing this series somewhat back in their favor. So the thing that people talk about the most when it comes to Kyrie Irving is his ability to operate as a three-level scorer. And in my opinion, there is not a better three-level scorer at the point guard position. There's nobody better at that than Kyrie Irving through the course of NBA history, right? If you look at Stephen Curry, I think obviously Curry has the better career. I think Curry is the better shooter. But as far as three-level scoring, there isn't a guy at this position who did it better than Kyrie. Magic didn't do it better. Jason Kidd didn't do it better. Steve Nash didn't do it better, although Nash was almost close because he was a really good finisher and a good three-point shooter and had a decent enough mid-range pull-up game. But nobody did it better at the point guard position than Kyrie, and that was on full display here in this series. Being able to make these high degree of difficulty shots at the rim, being able to get into the mid-range area and get to a spots there and knock down shots, and also just being ridiculously efficient from the three-point line off the catch and off the dribble. I believe he was 5 for 7 from the three-point line in this series. Again, we know Kyrie Irving as this elite level three-way scoring threat. I think this was one of the better examples of this through the course of his amazing career. What he did in this Game 5 as a three-level guy was absolutely ridiculous, and I think the only player to match that as far as elite level, three-level scoring was Kevin Durant in his 2 seasons where he won championships with the Golden State Warriors. But outside of those two guys, I think these were the best three-level scoring performances on the NBA Finals series since this time. And another thing I've really been trying to drill down to people about Kyrie Irving is the efficiency, right? Like, we talk about guys being able to make difficult shots. That's something we talk about with Kobe. We talk about that with Jordan. We talk about that with Durant. We talk about that with Kyrie, obviously, but with him, and it's also a thing that happens with Durant as well, is the ability to make the toughest shots imaginable at a ridiculously high clip. This is why people say things like Kyrie Irving is the most talented basketball player ever. And we can argue, we can say it's Kobe, we can say it's Michael Jordan, we can say it's LeBron, whatever you think. One of the things that makes people say this is the fact that Kyrie Irving hits the toughest contested shots at a ridiculously high clip. And it's also who he's being guarded by. If you look at his primary defender in this series when Golden State would go man-to-man, it was Klay Thompson. And at this point, Klay Thompson was in his defensive prime. Klay Thompson was an amazing defensive player in his earlier seasons. And it's the fact that he's covered by these lengthier defenders and he's hitting these extremely difficult shots at an unreal efficient clip. That is a theme through the course of his career, and that was shown off here on the biggest stage in NBA history with this Game 6. Being able to knock down these highly contested, tough shots in multiple spots on the floor, but still remain efficient. He was over 70% shooting in this game while hitting these contested jumpers over these lengthy defenders and all sorts of things. Like, sometimes tough shot making through the course of a game or the course of a season comes at a sacrifice of efficiency. Never the case with Kyrie Irving. And again, I'll put Durant in that conversation. I'll put Curry in that conversation. But again, with Kyrie, never did he sacrifice his ability to make shots at an efficient clip for the ability to make tough shots. He meshed those two things together in a way that a lot of other players through the course of NBA history were not able to do. What I really want to focus on, and this was my favorite part of the game in particular, was what he did late in that fourth quarter to seal this game. Cleveland isolated him a ton while Golden State threw a ton of different defensive looks at him. They would hedge, they would double, they would do a ton of different things, and he was still able to get to his spots and close this one out. saw a lot of different bodies. They threw a lot of stuff at him and was still dominating in one-on-one isolation heavy scenarios to put this game out of reach. This was really one of my favorite fourth quarter closing performances in a very long time. Again, we just saw Golden State, which was an elite level defense, throw so many looks at him. And generally, that's a good defensive strategy, right? If you have a player who's playing at a high level from a shot making standpoint, you want to throw bodies at him. You want to throw different looks at him. And Golden State did that a ton. None of that was able to keep Kyrie Irving from getting to the spots he wanted to operate at, and he was able to knock these shots down and put this one out of reach in the fourth quarter for Cleveland. So the Cavs won it and ultimately swung it over to a game 6 back home. There was a historical significance to this game as it was the first finals game in NBA history that you had two teammates score 40 plus in the same game. So this wasn't just Kyrie Irving dominating, but also LeBron dominating at a high level too. And also just one of the best 1-2 punch games we've seen in NBA history. And I mentioned it earlier, the conversation around Kyrie is while he may not have had the absolute best career compared to other elite all-time point guards, he is the most talented of all time, right? That is the narrative surrounding Kyrie. And in my opinion, this was the game that cemented Kyrie into some all-time conversations as far as raw skill and ability amongst other elite NBA point guards through the course of NBA history.